And joining us now on the line, all the way from Budapest, Hungary. What are you doing in Budapest? Is our good friend, legal analyst Joe DiGenova. Hello, Joe.
Good afternoon.
What takes you to Budapest?
Good morning to you.
I said, what takes you to Budapest there, Joe?
A little bit of client work and a little bit of pleasure. And the Danube River is magnificent, especially at night. They've managed to light the entire river at night. I invite people to come and see a real thrill.
All right. Well, let's move from Budapest to Baltimore, if we could.
Budapest to Baltimore.
Yeah, that's alliteration. I love alliteration. All right, let's talk about the situation over there. I mean, couple things. First of all, the federal government is going to look into the activities of the Baltimore Police Department. And then there are questions, meantime, about Marilyn Mosby, this prosecutor, and whether or not she is showing enough independence or whether she's making political decisions instead of legal decisions. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any question that the department would look into the Baltimore Police Department. They've had a series of problems over the years. They're going to do exactly what they've done in Ferguson and elsewhere, and that's fine. What they're going to find is that it's tough to be a cop in the inner city, and it isn't getting any easier. And the problems in that community are deep and wide, and I'm not sure what kind of policing that you can do anymore that isn't going to lead to trouble. So I'm sure they're going to find problems with regard to Mosby. I mean, her problem is we discussed this when I was in Germany last week, and that is her conduct at her news conference has created some of the most unbelievable legal issues, and now these issues about her conflicts of interest have been raised because of that, and it may very well be that she was so bold and flamboyant at that news conference because of these conflicts. So there are going to be motions filed. It's going to be ugly. And she's going to have to try to look like a professional, which would be a major change for her.
Do the cops have a point who say that she should recuse herself?
Well, I don't think that's probably technically anything they're going to be able to accomplish, but they may get a change of venue. Her performance at the news conference really has created bias and prejudice against them in the community. Putting aside the question of whether or not she acted too quickly and without enough thought, I just think that press conference was really a remarkable exercise in horrendous judgment. And, you know, even though some of the judges in town in Baltimore are going to want to keep a case like this, it's the kind of case that really could get pretty ugly legally.
Joe DiGenova, it seems that there's this movement to have these body cameras on police officers, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I think that in most cases it's going to vindicate cops, and I think that the behavior of the perps that they're following or confronting is going to be different, knowing that they're on video as well. But there is this question about who has access to the video of any encounter a cop has with a citizen. You know, if a cop pulls you over, and it doesn't end up in an official act, an arrest or a ticket or anything like that, should somebody have the right to pull that video and take a look at that stop?
Well, this is a major public policy question. I mean, everybody has concluded, you know, it seems there's like a universal judgment that the cameras are important, that they serve a useful purpose for both exonerating the innocent and helping to convict the guilty, whoever that is on either side of the badge. The issue, though, of who gets to see this stuff later and for what purpose really throws into question the Freedom of Information Act laws that exist all over the country. Now, all of a sudden, people want privacy when no official act is taken. The law is going to have to be changed if that's the case, because you could actually keep tapes secret if there's an ongoing criminal investigation so as not to prejudice the investigation. If there's no investigation, then there's no legitimate law enforcement reason not to make it public. So they're going to have to change the law in order to keep secret encounters between the police which do not end in an arrest. Now, we've seen a lot of these types of encounters that don't end in an arrest, which become very important pieces of public information for debate. So this is going to be a very interesting debate.
How is the law right now? I mean, if the police stop me and question me about anything, and they're videotaping it, and then they let me go, does someone have the right to say, hey, I understand Larry O'Connor was stopped by the police, I want to see that video, and I want to put it all over the news, and I want to put it up on YouTube? Do they have the right to do that?
In most states and jurisdictions, yes, they have a right to that. It is a public record, and absent some exception where you can keep it secret, which is like, for example, an investigation, so as not to prejudice anybody. That is a public record, and under most Freedom of Information Acts, it is revealable, and it must be revealed. It's like the 911.
But that can be abused. I mean, imagine if the police right here wanted to start bullying, congressmen who are on the oversight committee who aren't voting their way and approving D.C. laws. They could start sending the cops out to question, a congressman on a daily basis as they're driving home.
Well, they certainly
and then that video would go out there.
They could certainly do that, and they would find themselves in the middle of one hell of a brawl if they did do that.
Yeah. Well, but already we have cameras on the dashboard that record and microphones on the police. We see that every day.
Right, and the 911 tapes are another example of public information. And there is no right to keep those tapes secret unless there is an ongoing investigation and they don't want to reveal information to protect the investigation. That's the only reason, basically. There are no privacy concerns for public records unless there's a specific legal exception written into the law.
Let me ask you this hypothetical, too. Number one, let's say if they're blocking, as they're talking about doing in the District of Columbia, access to these things. Let's say you're a reporter and you pick up word that a councilman got stopped, and the councilman may have been inebriated but was let go by police. There would be an overriding public interest in knowing that, would there not?
Of course, and that's the reason. That's the real reason that people want to hide these things.
And what if you go in, though, and here's the other side of the coin, what if you go into somebody's house? Police sometimes, end up in domestic situations going into somebody's house. Now, there's no expectation of privacy on the open street, but what when they enter the threshold of someone's home?
Well, if they have a legal right to be there, then there's no privacy anymore. Once the police enter the house for a domestic dispute, they're there legally. Anything that they do can be taped, and it's a public record, and it becomes public. This is technology. You've got to learn to live with it. I mean, unless there's going to be exceptions written into the law, which are going to be very, very difficult to write in, especially people in the news media are not going to want to keep anything secret. So you guys, let me just tell you something. You're not going to find a lot of reporters who are going to worry about privacy when it comes to 911, tapes of encounters with police officers, and anybody.
Joe, you're in Europe, as we've already mentioned. I wonder how is the news going over there about the British elections? Most people were stunned.
It's a repeat of America. Do you remember how people were shocked when the Republicans picked up a net of 9 seats and elected more governors and took over more state legislatures? The press here was incredulous. The British press is just out of its mind. And what has happened is the same thing that happened in the United States. The polls were completely wrong. The polls show that Cameron would barely get enough to be able to create a coalition with somebody. Instead, it was a slaughter. The Conservatives took everything, and the Labour Party was decimated in Scotland. They lost every seat in Scotland except one. And they, of course, the Labour Party had to replace its leader, Ed Miliband. Cameron is riding high. And the funniest thing is sitting over here and watching CNN, where the people on CNN, it's a slaughter by Cameron, and all they can talk about is how he's going to screw it up because he has conflicts in his own party. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable stuff by CNN.
So it's really a loss for Cameron.
It was really a loss because he's going to have a tough time governing.
Oh my God!
Over here, I mean, it's just people are just stunned by the fact that people apparently were lying to the pollsters in record number. They didn't want to say they were going to vote for a conservative.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
See you back in the U.S. soon.
Looking forward to
Appreciate it, Joe.
I wonder if he's just going to become a European citizen next if he stays over there so long.
He's a rambling guy, that Joe.